Welcome to the City Council meeting, the work session of the Yukon City Council. Today is May 21st, 2024, 6:30 p.m. We're gathered here in the council chambers of the Centennial Building at 12 South 5th Street in Yukon, Oklahoma. The work session will focus on a discussion and overview of the proposed fiscal year 2025 City of Yukon and Yukon Municipal Authority budget, including proposed changes to the following fund number and fund name: general fund, sinking fund, sales tax, capital improvement fund, hotel motel tax fund, oil and gas, highway and streets, special revenue fund, water and sewer enterprise fund, sanitation enterprise fund, stormwater enterprise fund, grant fund, ARPA fund, pest fund, Yukon Reserve Support Fund, Yukon Economic Development Authority Fund. I'm calling this meeting to order. We'll be discussing this, and we'll begin our discussion on the revenue of the City of Yukon. Do any council persons have any discussion items on the revenue?
And where did we come up with this was the amount that we think we're going to get for the year, fiscal year? Mr. Clerk and Mr. City Manager, Assistant City Manager, would you guys like to discuss the revenue estimates based on the work of the accounting and finance team?
Well, we worked up a number, and then we went back and looked at it again with the mayor, and we've adjusted it to what we believe that's going to be the revenue this next year.
So we increased it
Yes.
based on
Yes.
his assumption that we're going to have more taxes than what we thought we were going to have?
We looked at the projections over last year and what we think the projections are going to be next year. If it stays in line with that, that was what the thought was.
I'll be interested to see that once Stacks opens.
Any other comments on the revenue side of the budget?
So we are projecting 2.4 million more than what we had.
The initial estimate was based on how many months, Mitch, of sales tax data?
It was over a couple of months. It was over a year, if I remember right. Almost 2 years is what we did the projection on, if I remember right. Was that correct?
It's close. It cut off for this fiscal year, I think, in March.
Yes.
Any other comments on the revenue side of the budget? Okay, let's move on to the general fund on the expense side. We reviewed in a deep session last Tuesday with all of the department leaders. We had an extensive review of each department's budget within each fund. And I'll tell you that I was very impressed by the department leaders, their level of knowledge at any level of detail. You know, each question we asked, sometimes a high-level question, sometimes a very detailed question, and the department leaders were on top of their departments. They understood key metrics, key expenses. They knew how everything worked. So we're very pleased with that.
Have we moved on to the changes to expenses? Is that where we are?
Yeah, we're on the general fund. In any of the department expenses that you'd like to discuss?
I would like to discuss the elimination of the League of Cities membership, OML's membership. These are our professional organizations, OML especially, which gives us a lot of insight. They give us a lot of legal advice. They also help us. One, that's where you get your new member orientation. It is a networking system to where you find out what other cities are doing, how we can improve. At the mayor's conference, which is something I think that you ought to attend, because again, it's a networking of mayors to where you learn how to be mayors together. I'm very sad and disappointed to see us pull out of NLC, OML, and the mayor's conference.
Thank you.
I already have a conference for WIMAGE. I am on the executive board. It's already been approved, so I do expect that to be paid for. Is that true?
If it's in this year's budget, we'd have to look at that, but if it's in next year's, the way that this is being
It's
proposed,
in July.
then the way this is being proposed, that would not be so.
Okay, so again, you're taking somebody who is on a national board, executive board, and saying they cannot go to that, when that is something that gets us wonderful information. Again, information on grants, information on things that we can do. As also a professional organization that I'm a part of, you know, if they had a men's, you guys are everybody else, women have this, and so to say we can't go, this is something that this council approved for me to be on their executive board, and now to say, oh, well, no, we're no longer gonna be a part of that. I
don't-
think that we're part of professional memberships because that is where we learn.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we can definitely look at those expenses, Councilwoman Selby. Are there particular ones, that conference, which is that associated with?
Well, that one is the WIMAGE one, the one that's for women in municipal government, where I sit on the executive national board.
Okay,
But you
I think we can
guys,
make that
no one
happen.
has ever gone to any of the conferences but myself. No one, I mean, Jeff went part-time to a mayor's conference for one. Those are where you learn. That's where you gather your information. Jenna presented at one. OML conference, that is where you get them. And for you guys not to participate in those and learn, I've always said that that has been a downfall, that why we're not more cohesive for that. So I think that is really hurting the council as such, not to be a member of these organizations, nor to be participating in their conferences.
I think it's a good idea.
I was actually looking forward to going to that too, so some of these
Yes, it is. It's where you learn.
further education stuff.
OML has wonderful conferences, but the main thing OML provides for us is a legal standpoint. There are things that I ask Roger to do and he can't, but I call OML and they help and they give us legal advice. But the main thing OML does is education.
Any other comments on the expense side of the general fund?
I look here that now our city manager not only is costing us $175,000, which is $189,000, but $156,000. So now we're in the hole for $331,000 to buy out her contract. Is that correct?
The exact number that we got from Human Resources is a severance payment of $189,000, and the former city manager also had sick leave buyback, which is a benefit that's offered to our employees that it's accrued over many years, and would be paid out either at the time of retirement or termination.
So that's going to be $345,000.
But the sick leave, as you'll notice in the budget materials, sick leave for each fund and each department has been accrued for those employees that have accrued that sick leave over time. I think in the budget meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, but the sick leave is paid out at, I think, 75% of the employee's base rate.
But again, it's costing us that for her to leave. Is Cindy even here? Oh, where is she? Oh, you're behind my pole. Hi. So $345,000. Okay.
Any other questions on the general fund expenses?
On the consulting fees, what are we looking here?
Yeah, we made a number of requests. We've had some shorthanded departments, in particular within our finance team. We had a city treasurer leave us in February of this year. And so the team has been working really hard to pull the budget together and so on, and to man the city treasurer function with the team that we have. We've supplemented that a bit with Crawford and Associates, who's a longtime consultant, accounting and finance consultant for the city, and they currently have one team member that is at our city. We also requested some information that was difficult to obtain We requested it on April the 15th, a month ahead of the budget cycle, and we weren't able to get any of those 6 or 7 information requests leading up to the budget.
Who requested those?
Brian Pillmore requested them.
Who was not on the council?
In the time leading up to a councilman taking office, in order that the councilman can come up to speed on the necessary information for the city, the professionals at the city are kind enough to meet with the city council person for multiple. The meeting I had with the professionals here at the city was for 2 hours, and they also accommodate reasonable requests for information. Obviously, things that are privileged and confidential and legal matters, those are held until the city council person takes their seat, and which I requested ahead of time and was graciously provided by our city attorney on the day that I was sworn in. But in order that we become effective in our role, we have to do some homework. And in my case, I was very focused from February the 13th until May the 14th when I was sworn in to read everything I could, including all the prior meetings, minutes, agendas, watching key meetings to understand the history. And I think it's really important that our citizens understand that it's not something we take lightly. It's an unpaid role, but we take it very seriously, and we spend an enormous amount of time making sure that we are informed and we can make decisions that affect lots of people's lives very directly. It's not something we take lightly at all. So the city manager asked if I had anything that I needed, and in advance of our meeting on April the 16th, on April the 15th, I provided 7 data requests. And unfortunately, I was informed due to the shorthanded nature of the team, I was not able to receive those at prior to the budget meeting. Between Wednesday of last week and yesterday afternoon, we received almost all of those data requests, thanks to our assistant city manager and his team working very hard to provide them so that we're able to work on this budget. One of the items that we received last evening at 5:30 p.m. was a list of all the city's bank accounts and all the balances in those bank accounts. We've not yet received the full statements of those bank accounts, but I was very surprised by the limited number of individuals in the city government that were familiar with those. It was kept to a very small number of people, and the balances, while they were a good surprise to the upside in terms of higher balances that the city had in the 2 of the 3 banks that we have reviewed so far, the balances were much higher than both department leaders as well as the city council had expected. Part of this line item to request Crawford and Associates to come in and spend a little bit more time is going to be to look into those bank account balances, look into the transactional detail, and in particular the transfers between funds, to ensure the proper documentation and the right review, and a sense of independence and fairness by an outside third party that's very trusted by the city and has done good work in the past. Any other items on the general expenses?
We're voting tonight on these ones that have X's on them. Do we know what those amounts are gonna be?
No, this is only a working session. We will vote on the June the 4th meeting
June 4th?
for the final budget. I believe that's the schedule.
I think that's correct.
This is a working session here for this 30-minute period. Then we'll have a public comment period in the main meeting, which will begin at 7 p.m. If there's no other discussion on the general fund, I'd like to briefly talk about the sinking fund and then move on to the capital improvements, which is a little bit more extensive. Any comments that anyone has on the sinking fund?
Can we go back just a minute on this 30,000 that we're gonna pay to keep the pool open extra in the evenings? Have we done a cost analysis to see if that's gonna be,
Go ahead, Mitch.
Yes, we have. We will provide it to the council, but we have a schedule that we're going to try to adhere to, but we're going to talk about it at a later date because we have some issues with lighting in the pool and stuff. But
we'll get that before the June meeting?
yes, we'll have a discussion on that. And we're trying to adjust our times to allow for that. We do have parties and things after that we'll discuss, but there's a lot of use of the pool. They're used pretty heavily.
Another thing is, I know in the past, part of the reason we didn't do that was because it was difficult to get lifeguards.
Well, that's one of the things, talking to the Parks Department, we're trying to do our best to obtain those. Like I said, I think it'd be better for us to discuss at a later date, but we are trying to take in consideration that there is a need of some later in the evening. I don't know if it's an hour or two, but like I said, we need to talk about the pool and lighting within the
Okay,
pool.
but we'll get that before the cost analysis. Okay, sorry. All right.
All right. Are there any comments on the sinking fund? This fund gets set a little bit more in more definitive detail in the fall each year. So is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Clerk. Okay. No comments there. We'll move on to the sales tax capital improvement fund. The department directors worked on a very extensive proposal, very thoughtful, and they considered what the city truly needs and what's most important in each of their department areas. Are there any ones that we should discuss? One of the conversations that I had with the assistant city manager is that it's really important that we think, because we are setting these capital improvement budgets for the next 12 months, and obviously cash flow comes in over the course of those 12 months. And the assistant city manager informed me that they already have a good process to assess what the level of funding is within the city and to think about when these projects are kicked off. So although approved on the front end, to begin the fiscal year on July 1, the city team members are very prudent to consider the timing for the launch of each project. I think one of the items that I would like to discuss is the sewer line upgrades. While it's not very exciting, right now in our current budget, we have, I think, around $100,000 that's been put in to the current proposed budget. And we were informed during, Arnold, could you speak about the sewer budget for a second? And these line replacements? Because I see the city seems to tell me every few months that there's one being replaced.
So we have several sewer failures per year. In the capital budget, we always, well, not always, in the past budget, we had requested $100,000. Basically, that is only enough if we have 2 sewer failures. That's all the money, that's all that we are allowed to fix for that year.
Yeah.
And we have, although we've done a lot of pipe bursting over the past several years, we've done a great job, but we have miles and miles of pipe in the ground that have been there since 40s and 1950s. So on a day-to-day basis, we're trying to patch these things up. But at some point, it gets to the point the whole line needs to be replaced. We have a manhole every 300 to 400 feet, so thank goodness it's typically in between the 300 to 400 foot range. But each sewer repair costs us about $50,000. So we are very thankful to have. Now we can do 4.
Yeah, so I think, well, actually 6, because this is 200 above and beyond the 100.
Oh, sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
realize that.
but I think we ought to talk about, what the right level is going forward, because I think all of the citizens would like, the sewage removed from their house, expeditious fashion. And with aging pipes, it's probably one of the least exciting things to talk about, but one of the most important.
And as everybody knows, it's very difficult when you get in the backyards and these easements. There's storage sheds and swimming pools and trees and whatever.
Yeah.
Most of the time when we have these type, the best way to do these sewer repairs is pipe bursting. We have done miles over the past several years. I think the city of Yukon has been one of the more aggressive, I could probably say in the state. Lawton has done, but they were forced to do it, I believe. I don't know all the full details, but we have really been aggressive trying to stop the I&I and have done a great job but there's a lot more.
Excellent.
There's a lot more.
While you're there, could you just mention about the roads and what we're thinking about from repairing via plate, the different panels?
And so we've come up with an idea that when you go look at a road in whole, a one block can be $250,000. If you go if it's concrete, you tear it, you replace it with concrete, build a base. So we're looking at putting a program together to do concrete panel replacements. So we have in this year's budget now to replace 96 panels, 48 by the city staff, 48 by a contractor.
Outstanding.
So I think if we can do that, kind of like the striping plan we put together 5 years ago, put that into place. And the first year you may not see, 96 panels out of 2 million. But over time, if we keep doing that, keep budgeting that, keep at least trying,
Yeah,
we're putting that forward to.
and certain roads can be fixed that way, but then there's other ones that have more significant failures that we need to budget.
Absolutely, some you can't just go replace panels, the entire road is bad, but we have several streets that if we could go replace 10, 15, 20 panels, that road would put us into 20 years down the road.
Councilwoman
I
Selby?
thought you said that was not a good idea to do it at the meeting that we had.
Well, what you have to consider if you do that, and we discussed this in length, so if you, I don't want to pick a street, but if you go take a street, and so we determine there's 20 panels need to be replaced. We could go replace those today. The other panels that are there are just as old as the ones that we replaced. Sometimes you're going to go in and replace these panels, and the panel next to it is going to fail within,
Right.
within a year. It's going to look,
So I thought we had decided that was not a good plan, but now it is.
well, we're trying to do something to better than, I'm not going to say almost doing nothing. We're setting, because, one street costs, like I said, could cost $250,000. So we haven't been able to do that many streets. And there is some streets that I think this would work. Some streets, it's not going to work. It's not a good idea. We will not be going in. We are going to put a map together. We already have the map. We're going to rank what we think are the worst streets in the city, and I think the council has looked at that in the past. So we would like to bring that back with our plan. We plan on doing 10 on this street, 20 over here, and let the council approve before we do any, because we do not want to go in just spinning our wheels, wasting money.
Okay, I just thought you had said it wasn't.
Well, if life was
Then we
wonderful,
have
absolutely,
then
I
we
would
have
rather.
conversations with
Yes,
people, and
absolutely,
you
and it
decide
has
that
been-
it is a good plan.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Councilman Shelby, the thought was that Arnold's trying to articulate is like Cornwell, Vandement, those streets are going to be easy to do panel replacements. It's the side streets where they've already fallen apart, there's no subgrade or base, it's all gone. That's what he's talking about. Those are the areas that we cannot
Okay, we just didn't
do
say
anything.
that last time.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to clarify. So,
That's what I recall hearing, was that it depended on the basis, how well the panels were gonna sit at the budget meeting. But I knew it was a concern if all roads were gonna be able to handle it. Are you confident you would know the difference between which ones may be able to handle it and which ones may not, or be able to
Yes.
adopt them better?
Absolutely, and with the engineer's help, and like I said, we would like to put this map together before we go replace any. And maybe something is number one on my list, that it's the council's, no, maybe this street should be first, or. But when we look at a street, we don't care if you live there, I don't know where you live, sir, but we don't look at who lives on this street, we just look at the condition. And right now, we have a map that we have we have it broke down as this street asphalt or concrete, and then the condition of that street basically as a whole. I think we're gonna have to go in now and look maybe more block to block. How many panels can we replace on Cornwell between this point and that point?
Sure.
Instead of rating the whole road, basically.
I can give him your address if you want me to.
I think it's out there for the public, for everybody to know at this point.
Any other comments on the capital improvements budget? Okay, those are the two most significant. I would like to cover a couple of other items, and then we can talk about all the other accounts. On the pest funds, we've had some discussion about that in prior meetings, and with the assistant city manager. Any comments that anyone has on the pest funds? This is a dedicated sales tax that focuses on police, fire, and general employees. I think what's really important on the pest funds is that we're really clear in our documentation about what the spending is being put towards, and in working with the police chief, the fire chief, as well as the assistant city manager and HR director, making sure that those funds are spent according to the law and documented appropriately. The rainy day fund. Anyone, the Yukon Reserve Support Fund, also known as the Rainy Day Fund. Any comments on that fund? Okay. There's a few other funds remaining. Any other comments about the budget that's been placed in other funds? I really want to thank the department directors. They came out last Tuesday evening and spent 4 hours in a really detailed review. I heard a lot of good comments from them afterwards. The engagement was very high. The questions ran the gamut from talking about sewers to talking about the fleet of cars that the city has, to the streets and the pipes and the wastewater treatment plant. So it was very broad reaching, but the team that you have as department directors across the city is very, very sharp. You all should feel very confident in their capabilities. Any other comments? Okay, seeing no other comments, we'll adjourn this working session, and in a couple of minutes, we'll resume with the normal Yukon City Council meeting.
There are seats down here in the front for those of you out in the hallway if you'd like to come in.